things on. Well, I won't ever forget those good times that we spent. Ever good at Osaka City. soul. Well, I won't ever forget those good times that we spent in Upturned, Osaka City.
worked. It worked. How's it going, everybody? Sound okay? Let me know in the chat if you would. Sound is good, maybe a touch low. Okay. All right, I turned up the gain a little bit. If it screwed it up, just tell me. Cool. All right, this is my first time using OBS. Hope I don't screw it up. But thank you for, I see you in the chat, Abyss and Clarion, maybe Jeremy. I know he's at a lunch. So this is just going to be sort of a short discussion. I'm going to talk about my top 5 games that I am really jonesing to run, but have never run. So it's got to be a game I haven't run. There's one gray one in there, but the games that are on my mind, like the top of my giant stack of want to plays, basically. So I'm just going to go through them. I'm watching the chat, so I will kind of stop after I introduce a game. And if there's, I would love to hear from you guys if you've run the game or what you know about the game, or if you've played in the game, or if you have any strong opinions, basically, is what I'm looking for. But I'm going to watch the chat too. So let's start with our number 5. We'll go lowest to highest. All right. So this is a game, The One Ring, from Free League currently. It was a Cubicle 7 property for quite a while. I have got to play half of an adventure and never got to run this game. I actually don't. I think I own the PDF, but I don't own the hard copy. It has an amazing box set that I would love to get. So why do I want to run this game? Because everything I know about it from my little play experience, which was literally an introductory adventure where everyone plays hobbits, and you leave your home to go to a neighboring hobbit village and get into some mischief, and everything about what we did just felt like very evocative of Tolkien, right? So they have rules for travel and facing darkness in a true Tolkien atmosphere, right? So you have a hope metacurrency, which you can spend to sort of improve rolls, or create some special effects, but your hope can be attrited by, sort of the darkness and corruption. So if I highly encourage you to seek this out, if for no other reason, the artwork, because in addition to a rule set that I think is designed to give you the feel of a Tolkien game, the art just totally emphasizes it. It's beautiful, amazing art, and I'm going to show you a piece of one of their maps in a minute. So they give the game master rules for creating dark threats like strange horrors that are, sort of legendary beasties, which is more of a Tolkien thing. Aside from the orcs, most bad things were, either unique or super rare. So they give special rules for the game master to design those, which I think is cool. Also, the system's real simple. You roll a d12 and a d6. You're trying to hit a target number. You can use your hope to manipulate that. Combat is pretty short and simple because this isn't like a murder hobo game at all. In fact, it's designed to ruin the day of a murder hobo, really. So that's kind of, it's very different. I know we've been talking on the channel a lot lately about cozy games and sort of mockingly, maybe a little sarcastic. This one is not quite cozy. It's cozy done right, maybe. Like, it still has threat and danger and stakes, but it's all very subtle. And if you want to be a hobbit, you get to really just lean into being a hobbit. So I'd really like to run this. Let me show you the map. So this is an example of one of their Middle-earth maps. It's just gorgeous, which I don't know if I've ever seen a bad professionally made Middle-earth map, but this is kind of the level of quality. I put the links for all these games I'm going to talk about in the description. I'd recommend checking out the website and looking at the products because the box set looks amazing. Like, I really want this box set. So yeah, just let me know in the chat if you have any exposure to the One Ring. It's on its second edition now, and at least its second company. Free League does produce concurrently with this stuff 5e versions of the game, which if you've played that, let me know that too. It's not what I would play, but cool. Oh, hey, Age, welcome. Yeah, let me know, Age, if you've played the One Ring or have any strong opinions. It is number 5 in games I want to run that I've never run. All right, so let's talk about number 4. Mutant Year Zero. So, from Free League, not originally. It was actually, I believe, the same people who used to do Dragons and Demons, Dakar Ok Demonar, which has now become Dragonbane for us English speakers. And then Free League picked it up, and this kind of spawned the whole Year Zero family of games, which are some of my favorite. If you're not familiar, Year Zero system is a dice pool system where you're rolling dice that you derive from your attributes and your skill levels. Most of them are D6, so you have a 3 in strength, 3 in skill, you roll six-sided. If you have special gear that can help you, you're going to roll some bonus gear dice. That's what Mutant Year Zero runs on. That's what Forbidden Lands runs on. That's what Coriolis runs on. They have changed it for some of their newer games. So Blade Runner, Twilight 2000, and I'm pretty sure that Walking Dead game they did. Those use dice size instead of dice quantity. So instead of having a 3 D6s to roll from something, maybe you have a D12 or a D10. But it's the same overall effect. You're trying to hit a success level, which is normally a 6. And then there's mitigating things that can cancel them out. Like, you will have armor dice. If you're being attacked and hit, you roll your armor dice. If you get 6s on those, it'll cancel some of their successes. That kind of thing. It's just a really intuitive dice pool system that I love, and the mutant version of it is one that I own a bunch of their products now, but I've never gotten to play it, and I really want to run it. It has a lot of base building and exploration rules, which influenced Forbidden Lands and some of their other games. And also, part of this I love, especially with the mutant world, where you typically will start in what they call the Ark, which is sort of your desperate sanctuary civilization. You venture out into the zone, right, which is like the irradiated, dangerous wildlands of the apocalypse. And you're trying to get supplies to bring back to the Ark to improve it. Or you move and start your own settlement somewhere else and do a similar thing. And then exploration can get real interesting because you'll have people acting as scouts, people who are helping with the guarding your group, people who are setting up your camps. And Forbidden Lands took all of that and ran with it. I got to enjoy that a lot in Forbidden Lands, so I know I'd probably really like it in this too. The other cool thing, they have like 4 core rule books. Hi, Vero. They have 4 core rule books, and each one is playable. You can by itself. So the base one, you make mutants, or I guess maybe there's pure strain humans. I'm blanking on that right now. Probably are. And there's a bunch of different cool mutations that have cool effects and sometimes have out of control effects. But then they have a book for sort of genetically modified and uplifted animals, so everyone can play a bunch of animals, right? And in that one, you're coming from the sealed off laboratory zone, right? That's patrolled and controlled by robots who just never got the message that the world ended, and they got their animal experiments locked up inside this thing. So the whole general idea is you start to realize there's something outside of where you are, and you would venture out from there. Then they have another one where you play as robots, and then they have one in space, I believe, which is a whole nother level of this stuff. But it's cool because all those rule books can be played separately or meshed together. They just change a couple little terms, I think your regular mutants they power their special abilities with something like willpower. I don't think they call it willpower though. But then the animals, it's called feral points, but it's the same idea. You earn these points a certain way and you spend them to trigger your special powers. Anyway, I love any Year Zero system game, and this is one that I own but have never gotten to run. I have no good excuse. It's on Alchemy. I have the Alchemy module, so I want to get it hopefully someday. Let's take a look at... So this is just an example of some of the product you get. I believe in the starter set you get 6 different city maps of post-apocalyptic conditions. So and this is Free League, right? So Sweden. So I believe there's like a Stockholm, and then there's like 5 other cities, and they're all designed to do exploration. This is very similar to the Forbidden Lands box set, if you're familiar with that at all. So you can actually mark out as you travel, and there's stickers you can put on the map to notate things, or like when you stop and you start base building for real, you can start putting down markers for that. Let's see, what's Jeremy saying? It might be fun to make character and play the starting adventure for every expansion and then decide which character to take into a longer campaign. That would be fun. Specifically with the animals, it's like a mini campaign just to get out of their laboratory preserve thing. So it'd be a lot of investment to go that route. But I'm sure we could just do one-offs, a little short adventure for each one. That would actually be fun, real fun. Are these top 5 games you want to run as one-shots or campaigns? Yes. been talking to Will, who, if you're not familiar, plays with us a lot on almost all the time, actually, on here. And he had expressed an interest in more campaign play because we do a lot of one shots or play something and put it down and go play something else kind of stuff. And I think I'm leaning that way too. I think number 2 on my list is probably going to be the next thing I run for the channel after we finish this Indie Heat trilogy that I've been doing. And that needs to be more of a campaign type thing. We did that more or less with Star Trek, because we played quite a few adventures with the same characters. We did that very much with Dune and Vassin. Yeah, Dune, exactly, Clarion. I agree. Like, we really got to develop those characters, and I think you saw, like, people's motivations and goals change over time, and then the conflict started getting more and more high stakes between the characters, which was neat. Not that you want that in every kind of campaign necessarily, but in Dune it was perfect. It was perfect. All right, so let's look at number 3. Traveler. Specifically the 2022 edition from Mongoose. So this is my gray area one that I said at the top of the video, because technically I've run Traveler first edition from GDW back in the day, but we're talking 30 plus years ago, a long time ago. The game has changed. I mean, the fundamentals are still there and the vibe is still totally there, but now that it's in Mongoose's hands, and now that they've done like a sort of a second edition, you'll see this says update 2022. I think that's technically their second edition of their version. They cleaned it up. They streamlined it. It had that old, 70s, 80s, almost Gygaxian vibe of like you'd read a wall of text and you're like, wait a minute, what did I just read? They've made it they punched it up. They've made it a lot cleaner, a lot more sensible, and they've added a lot of art. That was one thing Traveler just did not have back in the day for old GDW Traveler. Once you opened it up, might be art on the cover, but inside, no, they didn't really do so much with the art. They do ship blueprints. That was cool, but not so much with paying artists to art. But anyway, this is like the classic OG sci-fi ttrpg. If you're not familiar, it's thousands of years in the future. There is an empire of man, but it is not a 40K thing at all. Like, it's not that dystopian kind of thing. It's more like almost more like the Empire in Star Wars, toned down a couple notches, and then no actual evil Palpatine guy, so it's a far-spanning empire, but it's surrounded by lots of other nations or factions, and there's lots of pockets where no one technically has control, so players can get up to a lot of trouble. It's a real simple 2d6 kind of resolution system. They did add in the newest version an advantage mechanic, which is fine. Everybody likes advantage, I guess. But although advantage is supposed to be a replacement for modifying dice rolls, and Traveler still modifies dice rolls, so they're kind of making it more complicated in a way, but it's fine. It's not enough. It's not so crunchy that you're going to be crazy. Traveler is a ton of fun, and you can play a human, and there's this rich imperial history. If you read the history, it's exhaustive. And it goes way back. There was basically the humans are seeded through the galaxy. there was an empire of humans. I think the Volani they were called. And then Saul, our system, finally figures out FTL and starts jumping around. They run into the Volani. They shoot him up. There's can you still die? Oh, I'm getting to that. But they go back and forth, and eventually the Soleimani gets so powerful, this is hundreds of years later or whatever, that they take over that empire and inherit it. And then now I think they're on like the third Imperium. But this whole time, they've got all these neighbors. So they have the Zodani, who are a different human-seeded race, who have their own large territory of space, and their whole thing is psionics. Like, they're all gifted psionicists, and they train their psionicists, and it's an important part of their culture. Versus in the Terran, or not even, it's not Terran, but the Third Imperium, psionicists are usually outlawed. They have very restricted control over psionics. Number one will not be Daggerheart. Don't do that to me. So the Zodani are kind of the antithesis to the Third Imperium. But then you have like the Vargur, who are these anthropomorphic uplifted wolves, right? Like thousands of years ago, a Terran wolf was taken away and modified and turned into a race. So they have their own area, and they're kind of like, they tend to be sort of more piratical, which I think is a lot of fun. Then you have the Aslan, who look kind of like lion men. That's what the humans always see in them, is, oh, you look like a lion. So they got labeled lion thing. They're not actually lions. Unlike the Vargur, who are kind of a genetically altered wolf, they just happen to look a little bit like lions. And they're from this really militant, honor-bound society. Very cool. And there's some other smaller races, like these little kind of, like if a gray was a lizard man and short and had little wings, they're called the Droin, I believe. And there's a bunch. There's so much lore for Traveler. So many books, whether you're looking at the old stuff or the new stuff. There's a ton of races you can play or encounter. And then it's just really cool. So now I'm going to talk about the thing that Age just brought up. One of the coolest parts of Traveler is its life path system. If you're not familiar, it's kind of legendary amongst a lot of older gamers, because you would do this life path to build your character. So you start out, you're 18, you figure out a background, and then you're like, what career am I going to go into? I'm going to go into the Navy, the Imperial Navy. Okay, you look that up. It tells you, oh, you got to roll. You got to have these attribute requirements possibly, or you get bonuses if you have a high enough rating in something. Roll, hit a target, you get accepted into the Navy. First term, you get these skills, these benefits. Do you want to do another term? Roll again. And you just keep doing that until you're ready to stop, right? You muster out, you collect all your benefits, and you're now an adventurer. In the old system, you could have these mishaps where you actually, your character could die in the life path character creation system, which some people think is dumb when they hear it. I think it's hilarious, but I like making characters, so it doesn't really bother me. In the new system Age, it's an option. You can have mishaps which might kill you, but it's optional. You can instead take sort of like handicap, like disabilities, like attributes get reduced, or you develop some other problems. All this is to say, you all make these characters, and they're all unified usually around a ship, right? Somebody's life path is going to give them a ship. Oftentimes, multiple people in their life paths will get the chance to have a ship, and there's sort of a rule in character creation, there's only going to be one ship. So if other characters get one, they just take the money value of that and apply it to this ship, because you don't just get the ship free. you get the ship like you just took out a car loan and you owe a ton of money. And this is the main sort of incentive for you to go out and get up to no good in the galaxy so you can make some money, right? So there's a lot of ways to play this game, right? In my mind, it's a Firefly game. I would just want to have a crew because this game has good ship rules, good ship combat rules. The ground combat's fun too. So I would just want to play like a Firefly game where we're a crew on a ship trying to make money to stay in the air or in space. But you don't have to do that. You could be spies. That's a cool one. You could be smugglers. You could be agents of the Zodani in the Empire or vice versa. You could be explorers. There's actual like charters to go out and scout unexplored areas or rare or low, what's the word I'm looking for? Less explored areas, I guess. So there's a lot of different ways to play this game. And if you're playing a long campaign, you could kind of do multiples of these things, which is totally cool. Let's see. Oh, let me show you this. So this, I don't know how much, if you're watching this on your phone, this is probably looks like nothing, but this is sort of the known galaxy, right? So you can see you've got sort of the Imperium near the center there. You've got up the Zodani Consulate, which are the psionic guys I was talking about, up to the left. The Vargar up above the Imperium. The Aslan are in there. And there's a bunch of little areas too, like there's these sword worlds that are these super militant separatist type folks. This, what I'm showing you, is actually from a website that you can go to. It's an independent thing. Mongoose doesn't own it or control it, but you can go in, and every little rectangle on here represents like a sector. I believe it's a sector, right? And then you can zoom in and look at subsectors, and then you can zoom in and you can even design your own subsector or sector. And Mongoose fully endorses this thing. So it's like not their product, but they approve of it. And it's a really cool tool because this game has like the ships all have jump drives, right? And they're pretty well thought out. It's not like I think I was complaining on Discord the other day about how as much as I love the Alien films, their whole explanation of space travel makes no damn sense at all. Well, in this game you have jump drives, and the jump drives have different ratings, and those ratings are how far you can get in a jump, basically. And every jump, because of the strange mechanics of jump space, takes about the same time. So it's roughly a week, which I'm sure they did just for game convenience. But so if you have a jump 5, you can jump 5 times farther in a week than a ship with a jump 1, right? And the classic example in Traveler why this is useful is because subspace communication is not like at Star Wars or Star Trek kind of levels. It takes time for information to cross these vast amounts of space, more time than it takes ships to get across them. So the classic example is you've defaulted on your ship loan, but as long as you keep jumping ahead of when they can communicate that information to the next law enforcement station or embassy or bounty hunter office, whatever, as long as you can keep staying ahead of that, you're probably okay. I mean, eventually they're going to catch you, but this is sort of a classic Traveler thing, is like just keep going further away from known civilization to avoid paying your bills, which is silly, but it's fun. Pony Express style game too. Yep, absolutely. And they have the Traveler Aid Society, which is a benefit a lot of characters can get in their character creation life path, which sort of helps you get like hotel rooms and it's just little perks for people who are in members of the society. In the old days, where was I going with this? I'm blanking. Sorry, I totally lost that because I was reading Abysses. Sounds a lot like new upcoming iconic hit cult classic game Exodus. Yes, Abyss. This is why I was railing when we talked about Exodus. So in Exodus, the video game / role playing ttrpg that Wizards is making but really hiring out to get made, you are exploring and you are called a traveler. There's a society that supports the travelers. There's a faction called the Aslan. It's just, it burned my soul when I started seeing all that stuff. But whatever, it's going to fall on its face and fail. So that's Traveler. Strongly recommend it. Definitely going to play it myself again someday. It's a very involved game. I would not make, to the point we were discussing earlier, age, I would not do a one shot in Traveler. You're gonna make these characters, and like you're gonna have so much buy-in just from when you do the life path that you're gonna do a one shot. No way. This would have to be a campaign. So I'm starting to look at all these and realize, yeah, I would like to run a campaign for all of these. The One Ring probably would be the one I'd be okay doing a one shot with, because I think the One Ring leans more towards a little more linear adventures, like heroes facing darkness and doing the right thing, kind of spiel, right? So that's more suited to a one-off adventure than a bigger, more ongoing campaign, in my opinion. Five campaigns at one time, do it. Oh, dude. No. Have you seen us? We're like squirrels, dude, or goldfish in a bowl. We like, hey, what's that game over there? Oh, what's that one over there? No, if I can get Sword of the Serpentine off the ground and we can have maybe half a dozen sessions, I will be thrilled to death. Oh, I just spoiled. Oh, anyway, let's go to the next one. Swords of the Serpentine. So, I've blathered about this on the channel and on the Discord from time to time. This is from Pelgrane Press. This is, I believe, the most recent iteration of the Gumshoe system. So it's part of the Gumshoe family of games, right? And the Gumshoe family of games is founded on a very different system than what most people are going to be familiar with. Because it was investigation-based primarily originally, all the characters have investigation skills, and then they have sort of more mundane skills. The investigation skills are very unique and solve a lot of problems in games that have a lot of mystery or investigation going on, because basically if you have the appropriate investigation skill in a scene to discover a clue, you just let your game master know and you get the clue, right? This is in strong contrast to Call of Cthulhu, which I love. And in fact, Jeremy and I were just talking yesterday about maybe playing some Cthulhu because of that new Alchemy Cthulhu bundle. I love Call of Cthulhu, but you run into a problem with that system, especially because it's investigation based, where say you have a 40 in the spot hidden, and that's what you need to see the clue, and you choke it, right? Okay, so what happens now? The rules aren't really made to like Year Zero game where you take some damage and you re-roll or something. Doesn't really made that way. So now does your game master just fudge everything to give you the clue, or does your game master have to reimagine a way to introduce that clue later on? Why have all that hassle? If you have a character who's good at this investigation skill, they should just get the clue, right? So that's where they're coming from with the gumshoe system. Now you cut to Swords of Serpentine, and they've taken that and they said, let's make a sword and sorcery game. So they created this really rich world. The starting city, where most of the action is meant to take place, and what the rulebook really details. It's this beautiful kind of like Venice-like city. I'll show you a map of it here in just a minute. It's called Eversink, and the whole conceit of it is that it used to be one little island in the mouth of this river where it empties into the ocean, and sort of like a Venice thing. One crappy little island, and then the locals found this swan goddess, and they began to worship her, and in response she rose islands out of the water to create this big group of islands, and suddenly everyone started prospering, commerce started growing, and so it became really like kind of a Venice. And it's all this really intricate. There's a lot of intricate politics, a bunch of different factions in the city. There's some really cool sorcery rules in the game. They're kind of open sorcery rules where you kind of like have a association, like you do water magic, right? Well, you can do little effects that are okay, or you can take corruption and do big effects, and you get to kind of decide sort of the scope of those effects with the game master, of course. The problem is that the big stuff, whenever you create corruption, it actually hurts the goddess of Eversink. It harms her, right? So sorcery is actually a no-no, and there's a whole church that will hunt sorcerers down. Really cool. And then it's sort of contrasted by the fact that in other parts of the world, people do sorcery and they don't have these problems. It's just in Eversink. But Eversink is like the commercial center of the world. It's like this huge melting pot. People come from all around the world there. So this is where the power, the wealth, the intrigue is. So this is where you're going to be doing your sorcery, probably. So anyway, it's a really cool, beautiful book too. Beautiful book. I have the hardback. I love it. Everything's in one book. They do have one expansion for it. Pelgrane doesn't crank out a ton of stuff for their games, but I don't think you'd need it right away. There's so many options in this game. Their gods, great take on their gods. So their gods are all just basically spirits who have attracted attention, and it's that idea that the more worshippers they gain, the more powerful they get. So there are other gods in the world, but Eversink has one god, and it's the swan goddess. Let me show you the map. So this is Eversink. You can kind of see there are a bunch of little islands and everything. There's this really cool feature of this world where everything is always sinking, right? So you'll have these old buildings that might be 10 stories high, but they've been sinking for centuries. So there could be like 3 or more levels that have sunk underground. So they're kind of creating their own, for lack of a better term, dungeons, just by sinking. And they have all these real cool cultural things. Like anytime someone dies, a statue is built. So the whole city is just covered in statues. And it's a major no-no to mess with the statues, because the belief is that the spirit of the dead person is linked to that statue. So it's just a super cool world. It shares some DNA with the Lies of Lamora. Is that those books are called? Which are, I've read the first one, really enjoyed it, and definitely there's some similarities. It draws on Venice a lot, obviously, with canals and this sort of brackish water surrounding these islands. And then Lankmar, because there's so many shenanigans just going on all the time in this very populated city. It has a lot of DNA shared with Lankmar as well, if you're familiar with like the Fritz Leiber stuff. Abyss, we need 2 more Daggerheart stuff and at least a mini campaign for Coriolis, but you typed Cornholus minor and 10 one-shot mother runs and 5 more indie heat episodes. I'm exhausted just reading that, Abyss. H said, is Gumshoe the system where you have a finite amount of skill points that you allocate to your character at start of the game and they get spent during the game? Yeah, so you have ratings in your skills that can be spent as points to enhance things. So for the mundane skills, you say you have a fighting, I forget what they're called. Say you have a fighting of 5, right? You could just attack because you fight. You have the skill. Doesn't matter how many points you have in it. And then you roll a d6. It's a real simple resolution system. Most tasks you need a 4 or more, but that'll go up with complications, obviously. You could just roll a die, or you can spend points from your fighting, which that's not what it's called, but I'm blanking right now, to add to your die roll. So all the way up to making it a guarantee, pretty much. And the cool thing about that is, say you spend all 5 points at some point, you're still a swordsman, right? You still have the fighting skill. Spending the points is an option, doesn't take the skill away. Now, specifically, you have investigative skills, and they do 2 things. They do the traditional Gumshoe thing of, I need to find a clue or catch on to something that's going on in an investigative way. So I have the skill, so boom, I get it, right? And they have a lot of cool adventure design tools for building your mysteries. So it's not just they get the clue, they go to the next place, they get the clue. It actually makes it exciting and interesting. But when you spend investigative skill points, big effects happen. Like really cool add-on effects happen. So you can actually have I think it's a skullduggery, maybe investigative skill, and you're trying to backstab someone. So the backstab is like your fighting type mundane skill, but if you spend a point from this, now it's something even cooler. Like you backstab them and it's perfectly silent, or something like that. So mundane skills, spend the points to increase your odds. Investigative skills, spend the points for cool sort of add-on effects. And narratively, they have to make sense, right? It's not like, I'm going to spend a point to persuade while I stab this guy. That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, really cool system, really cool world, which is a big part of it for me. So this is going to be, I'm pretty much decided, the game I run next on the channel. I wonder if this is one of the influences for Lies of Locke Lamora. Oh, that's a good question. I want to say this game is max maybe 5 years old. Feel like Lies of Locke Lamora is older than that. Actually, I'm going to look right now. One moment. (2022). It's 3 years old. I'm pretty sure the Lies of Locke Lamora predates this. So they're probably more like they influenced Uh, yeah, Lockmore is way older. Yeah, Lankmar as well. So they were influenced by all of that stuff for sure. Anywho, get back to my settings here. We'll go. Okay, number one. So this one, I would love to run on the channel someday, but it's a crunchier game. So I'm going to run it in real life with my local group for a while before I try to do it online and look like a schmuck. So, whoop, there we go. The Broken Empires. Okay. So this was a kickstarted. This is written and created and envisioned by Trevor Duvall. Trevor Duvall is a voice actor who has a YouTube channel called Me, Myself, and Die, where he does mostly solo actual play stuff. He's on his like 4th season of doing that. He does other stuff too. He does like little game breakdowns of games that he loves. He's done a few interviews. He has one really good Blade Runner actual play that he did with other people, but he's mainly known for his solo gaming. But he's an old fart like me and Jeremy, who's been playing RPGs since the 80s at least. So he and also kind of like us, he played a lot of those early D&D competitors, right? He wasn't stuck just playing D&D. He got to see all these other games. So he wanted to make a game that kind of meshed together his favorite things from games he's loved over the years, right? His favorite kind of games are skill-based as opposed to class and level-based. So this is a skill-based system. It's a percentile system. He's a big fan of like Mithras and RuneQuest and Harnworld and all the BRP, Cthulhu, Delta Green, stuff like that. So percentile skill system. And if you're not familiar with that, you forget about attributes. He has no attributes in his game. Well, that's not exactly true. He has some descriptive attributes, but not in the way that traditional RPGs use them. It's all skills. And you have percentile scores in those skills. You roll a D100. You want to get under the skill, right? That's the basic idea, but it's what's called a blackjack system, which is unusual for these percentile-based systems, where you want to roll under your skill, but as high as you possibly can. So if you have a 60 in a skill and you roll a 50, that's actually better than rolling like a 5. Whereas in most traditional percentile-based systems, you want to roll really low. And the reason this matters is because he's come up with a cool success level system where the tens die of your percentile roll is how many success levels you earn if your roll is successful. So in combat, if I attack you with my 60 and I roll a 59, I have 5 success levels, which is a lot. If you defend and you roll a 20-something and are successful, you have 2 success levels. You subtract those 2 from my 5, I still have 3, right? So I can add that to the damage because all the weapons have a base fixed amount of damage. Or there are combat tricks. This game has a bunch of cool combat tricks. Some weapons open up combat tricks to you, and there's some just general ones you can do. So the way he likes to describe it is you get a bunch of success levels. You can spend them on, like, I knock his shield away. I change where I hit because this game uses hit locations. It was supposed to be, the leg, but I change it to the head because I have enough success levels. And now I'm wounding this guy in the head, right? So it's this real cool, it's sort of granular combat system, but it's all resolved with a dice roll, right? Which is not how like an old RuneQuest or Harnworld, that would be way more stuff you would be doing just to resolve that one thing. This is all one dice roll. Then, to kind of follow up on that, there are no hit points the way we think of hit points. Every time you get hit and take damage, it is a wound, and you track the wounds on your body depending on where they occurred. So you might have a 1-point wound in your left arm and a 3-point wound in your right leg and a 1-point wound in your head or something, right? And so when someone goes to heal you, they have to say, I'm healing your right arm wound, and they roll, and maybe they treat that, right? So it just makes combat a lot more visceral. In all his playtests, he's described most combats ending with just the losing side fleeing or just incapacitated by wounds. And actually, death is not normally how it ends. It's usually like you've intimidated your opponents, you've wounded them so that they can't fight anymore, or you've routed them, basically, are kind of the things. You can disarm them, all those kind of things. Combat could be very deadly in this game, but it usually ends with one side going, up, I've had too much. Interview with Trevor. We did a full interview with Trevor Duvall, the creator of this game, host of Me, Myself, and Die. It's on the channel. I did not put that link in the description, but look around our channel. It's there. It's a really cool interview. He's a funny dude. Like, he's a professional voice actor. Tells some pretty cool stories. All right. Another cool thing, it has an open improvisational magic system. So if you're familiar at all with Ars Magica, that is what really inspired him in this game. Also, I think he cited Mage the Ascension, which is almost just like modernized Ars Magica in a way. But the idea is there are no like pre-written spells, right? You're not doing a Vancian magic thing like D&D where you memorize the spells and then magically they go away. You forget them until tomorrow, right? Or you're not a cleric who like gets so many spells from their god each day. Sorcerers in the Broken Empires master different parts of magic, and those reflect as skill scores. Some of the magic is the binding effect, and some of it is the threads, right? So the bind could be like witness, which is like precognition or spying or observing or something like that. And then the other part that you combine with that could be animals, right? So I want to see through that bird's eyes. So it's going to be this witness and this animal score. Put them together, determine how many success levels I'm going to need to make that happen, and roll. It has sort of a corruption mechanic where if you don't make the required success levels, you're going to take corruption, and that eventually can turn into saying we're rolling on a chart and really bad things can happen, which I enjoy. Forbidden Lands had a thing like that. Ars Magica, I think, had, and Mage did too. Mage is, the whole idea is, which comes a lot from Mage, is magic should be, if you want to get away with your magic, it needs to be subtle, right? People shouldn't notice that you're doing magic because the world notices, like fate or whatever notices and doesn't like when you mess with reality. So if it notices, it can be a problem for you. So there can be wizards running around throwing fireballs, but those wizards are gambling with fate, basically. Cool idea. I like it a lot. I also like the idea of improvisational magic and not just having spell lists. The other side of that are the priests, right? Priests have a real cool mechanic. Priests don't get spells. They're not like D&D clerics, but they can ask their gods to intervene. Yeah, you're right, Clarion. It is a cool collection of different elements. The priests, I think they're called Godbound, can ask their gods to intervene. And they have a piety score that at character creation, they see their piety score. And then from then on, they never see their piety score again. The game master tracks it. And whenever they ask their god for help, they have to roll against their piety. Then they don't know what the score is. the way they know that they're improving their piety is by doing the works that their god wants them to do as a representative of the god. So it's actually a system that makes clerics do real cleric stuff, which I've played a lot of D&D games where clerics, they healed, they turned undead. Oh yeah, something about God, whatever. You know. In this, if you don't keep doing the works that your God wants you to do, spreading the word, building things, doing acts of charity that God values, whatever. If you're not doing that stuff, your piety score is going to degrade, and eventually you're going to piss off your God. See, wounds, tactical combat I've recovered. There's not really a whiff factor because there's so many combat tricks, so many ways to use these success levels. It's not like a D&D roll 20-sided, oh, you missed, wait till next round, try again. It's a little more intense, which I like. And then there's a strong social interaction system where, and it's not for everyday social stuff. So his example is always like, it's not for bribing the guard to get by or whatever. It's for petitioning the Duke to let you go into his sacred forest to do whatever, right? So the Duke, the NPC, the major NPC, will have sort of a tolerance level, which is basically how long they will listen to you before they kick you out, right? And then you're making skills rolls based on how you're approaching this. So if it's a Duke, maybe you're using like your manners skill, right, which is like your courtly proper etiquette sort of skill, or you're just doing a persuade, or you're doing an intimidate, which sounds like a mistake to me. The Duke will have a particular social skill that he's fond of and one he doesn't like. And you can try to figure out what those are beforehand, or you can just go in blind. So it lends all this sort of intrigue and politicking and communication in these major social engagements. You're not going to use this all the time, just for the big stuff, which that made me think about Dune. That felt like more of a Dune-like mechanic in a way. It's for the important political stuff, basically. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to this game. A lot of the games he loves are games I remember fondly. So he cites, in addition to all the percentile-based games, he loves Traveler, and he's played Traveler and Tunnels and Trolls and all these other games. He does little bits on his channel, little not really reviews, but look-throughs of specific games he's played that he loves. He doesn't really just review any old thing, but they're worth checking out. Let me show you their world map. So this is the world map as it exists right now. This is in Kickstarter, or not in Kickstarter. This is post-Kickstarter, but not fulfilled. We're supposed to have the final PDF by Christmas. He thought it might be the end of summer, but he's waiting for art. It's all human art, and the little bits of art that they have shown look amazing. Abyss sounds like it looks like a lot to keep track of. Maybe. It's compared to some narrative games, for sure. He calls it sim light, right? Because he likes simulationist games, but he doesn't want to get bogged down. So it's like a light version of a simulationist game. So probably a little more to keep track of, for sure, compared to a lot of modern games. Although I got to be honest with you, after we played Daggerheart, that game, to play in person, you'd be tracking so many silly little meta currencies and on-off switches and conditions and things. This actually is probably more streamlined than that, right? Because you just have percentile skill scores and you care about how many success levels you get when you roll, and that's kind of it. For resolution, you are tracking wounds, but hey, life's rough. Anyway, this is a world he made. Beautiful map that he had designed for the game. He's using all human art, so that is one of the delays on the product, is he's waiting for all the art to come in. He made this world through his 3.5 seasons of his Me, Myself, and Die solo actual plays. So using the Mythic emulator, I think it's called, it's a solo generation game tool. He basically kind of built his story and his world from that. It has influences from other games for sure. He's inspired by Harn in particular. You'll see up in the top, there's a little kind of green area. It says Iron Veil. So for one of his seasons, he actually played Ironsworn, which is a really cool game that we have played on the channel too. Will, Jeremy, and I. Check it out if you haven't. It's a game master less game. It works really well for solo, but you can do it as groups too, which is what we did. And the whole conceit of that game is you make characters who go to this other world, more or less, like beyond a veil or another dimension or whatever. You kind of fill in the blanks on that. To explore, to conquer, to do something, right? Your group decides kind of in advance what the whole reason is. Well, he did Ironsworn as one of his seasons, right? So he contacted the creator of Ironsworn and asked him if he could reference the Ironlands in his new game. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So it is part of his game. You don't get to see the Ironlands map. That belongs to the Ironsworn guy, and you should buy it if you want to check it out. But he has a veil up there. When beyond that veil is the Ironlands. So pretty cool, in my opinion. You'll see on the map a gray area, sort of upper center area. It's called the Shroud. That was apparently, in his world, the first attempt to create a thing like the Veil where they would banish all the bad guys. And it went totally wrong. And now that is like this hands-off area, like this area full of, dark terrors. So kind of like Adventureland. If you want to do more traditional monster killing adventure, you go to the Shroud. The game has some unique, because he loves Harn so much, the cultures are very filled out, very detailed. There's a lot of different human cultures, but there are also dwarves who, they're kind of rare, but they exist. And their whole thing is they used to be these really powerful engineers, mystical engineers. And they actually fly around on these giant stone floating city ships kind of things. And they don't, sort of a nod to Warhammer 40k, I think, because he likes that stuff too. They don't actually know how any of it works anymore. They just perform all these rituals, and they know they keeps the thing flying, right? So you have these cool dwarves who are kind of like homeless, traveling around in their mystical ships. You have these not really elves, but these elf-like people who are the kind of like the real elves left, right? They went through that Iron Veil in his lore, but these people they left behind are kind of like, I don't know what you call them, 3/4 elf, right? They're not quite elves, but they're around. They're super rare. And then you have orcs. And Trevor is old school. So orcs are baddies, right? That's not a popular trope apparently anymore, but he's old school, kind of like me and Jeremy and Will. Orcs are bad guys. He has half orcs, but half orcs for him are not genetically half orc, right? They're not what a lot of people worry about, them being like a product of an orc and a human woman because bad things happened. They are an orc who's like one in a million, who's like, you know what? All this pillaging and burning and savagery, I don't think this is for me. And so they try to leave it behind and enter civilization. That's what a half orc is. So it's more like half hearted than like actual species wise being half orc, right? They're full orc physically. But of course, they're shunned and treated like garbage by the humans, right? So it would be a challenge to play one, but it also sounds kind of cool in a way. So he has all these real in-depth cultures. I'm really looking forward to getting this book and reading all this stuff, because I have watched all. He has 3.5 seasons done, and I've watched all of that. So it's really interesting now to see how he takes what he's narrated in his solo plays and fleshed out to make it more real and more complete. And there's lots of weird little rules, like the only gunpowder that exists is used in cannons. For some reason, they can't figure out how to make it work in guns. It might be because the gods don't let it work in guns, only in cannons. Small guns, I mean. So you get this sort of like late medieval thing of where there aren't really rifles, or there's not like a matchlock rifle or anything like that, but there are these ridiculous bombards, sort of like, was it Return of the King that had the big cannon that they kind of drew like a wolf or dragon or something on, that kind of stylistic thing. So that's kind of cool. And there's no classes, right? So you can mix and match stuff. There is a life path system, which is cool. He's a Traveler fan too, so he wanted to have something like a life path system. And then experience is cool too. You have to have goals. You have to have like short-term, long-term goals and group goals. And you don't get experience points unless you've made some action furthering a goal, right? He comes from an acting background, so he's a firm believer that your characters, they have to have wants and needs for there to be conflict and action in the game. And that's spot on, right? If you're in a boring game, it's probably because you have characters that they haven't defined what they want or need, or both. And if you want to get really into it, spent some time in theater nerd, sorry. It's actually important to have a character have wants and needs. And a lot of times they aren't even aware of their need. People around them might be aware of that need, but they aren't. They're distracted by their want. And this creates all these great little layers and conflicts. So that's part of his experience system, which I really appreciate and I really like, and would be more appropriate for a campaign game than a one-shot. So when I am finally comfortable and ready to bring this to the channel, much like Swords of Serpentine, I'm going to want to play at least 6 adventures or sessions. Oh, that's another thing. Let me show you this last thing. And I apologize if I'm ranting or talking. In fiction writing too, you're exactly right, Clarion. Characters in fiction they got to have wants and needs. They have to have motivations, but they also have to have things that sort of oppose them within themselves, and that's usually the needs. Anyway, so I'm currently, because I'm so excited to get this game, I'm currently making a village in Incarnate. This is the Incarnate map builder app that I made this in. And this is a Game Master version, that's why it's littered with numbers. But Trevor Duvall is a big fan of the players directing the story, right? They are the ones going out there and deciding where the adventure is going to happen, what they care about, which direction they're going to take things. The Game Master is a facilitator, but not the cliche old school storyteller Game Master, right? This is not a game where you tell your story and 3 to 6 of your friends sit around the table sort of participating, but it's really your story you're telling. So what you're saying is the gunpowder rules are canon. brilliant. You get the Miguel pun award for tonight, or not the Miguel. I'm sorry, the Arturo pun award for tonight. Thank you. So, having said that, I am currently making, in anticipation of getting these rules, a village where every single building is explained, at least to a small degree. And on top of that, there are going to be 4 major adventure hooks that just exist in this village. Totally just optional, right? They're just things that, as the players interact and learn about things, they can decide if it's something they want to get involved in, right? They're going to look at their wants or their goals for their character or the group goals and decide, does this line up with us? Let's go check this out, right? So that I can just, on the fly, be ready for whichever direction they go, at least for about 4 adventures, right? And then we'll take a break and reset. In addition to that, I have all the villagers. There's a main villager at every location who has a dominant sort of personality trait and has a want and a need spelled out, and any small little political details. So in addition to those 4 adventure threads, I'm going to try to weave in multiple little political or interpersonal relationship issues throughout the village, right? That players could get into trouble with, get involved with. So just as a for example, up there, number 4, that's going to be a inn and brew house with a particular brew that is extremely popular. This village, I should have mentioned, is a mountain trading post, and it lies on a intersection of 3 mountain passes, and traders, caravans come through here to take one of those passes to some other place in the lowlands, right? So they get a lot of people coming through here. So this particular alehouse's brew it's a very potent but oddly sweet tasting brew, and that's because secretly the owner has someone go and catch a goblin. He chains him up over his vat and slowly drips goblin blood into his brew, which gives it this little extra thing that just makes it super popular. No one knows that that's what he does. So we add to that a complication that the people that would get these goblins for him aren't doing it anymore. Well, who are these people? So if you look up at 12, you'll see a little community of buildings that look a little different than the other ones. These are the Weef Wolves. So there's a community in this village that sort of sets itself apart, and it is dominated by the Weef Wolves. And if you know anything about Old English, Weef, which became wife, right, in modern English, meant woman. Wolf means wolf. So were meant man, right? So when you see werewolf, you're seeing man wolf. Weef wolf is lady wolf, right? So one of the Weef wolves would hunt goblins for the brewmaker and bring him back alive, and that was how he kept his string of goblin juice coming, right? Well, that Weef wolf's husband has left her, and there's this whole thing with the Weef wolves where they're sort of like these powerful, almost Amazon-like women, and they have these men who are completely enthralled by them and kind of servile. But they like it that way because there's a magic in the Weef wolves that sort of nourishes them in and makes them feel good, right? So the women can shape change, the men can't. Well, the man that her spouse has gone away, so it's instantly 2 threads, right? The brewer can't get his goblin juice anymore, so he might be wanting to hire the adventurers to go get some goblins alive, which would be a challenge. The Weef Wolves woman needs to find her husband, adventurers can help with that too. And then I have a couple other I'm still working on. One involves a minor noble who controls a bridge up to the north from here and kind of guards the pass, who has made a pact with a demon, and there's some stuff with that too. So basically I just want to have a lot of different angles for them so that they can choose where they go. Reminds me of Twilight. Well, okay, maybe Twilight, but not as nice. I don't know. Anywho, that's what I'm working on for that game. I'm really excited for Broken Empires. I think it's gonna be really cool, and I'm also really excited for Swords of Serpentine to run it on the channel. I think it's really cool. I'm looking forward to see how the guys embrace it. I could see they're gonna have to pick sort of what angle they want to take with that. Let me go back to that one really quick. They're gonna have to sort of, because you can choose like your group's background, right? You could be sorry, I see a wolves and instant Twilight reminder. That's totally fine. These are like really tall, super powerful female wolves. If that changes anything, I don't know. But anyway, Swords of Serpentine, when you session 0, you make your group, you're going to align yourselves with a faction. And that could be the old rich of the city, right? Maybe you're members of an old family. These people have lost sort of their traditional income streams, but they're clinging on. They're living in their ruined old mansions. They don't want to sell the silverware, that kind of thing, you know? Or it could be the young up-and-coming merchants. Or you could be the town guard. Or you could be, what was the one? Oh, there was like a group of book collectors, right? All these weird little factions, and the group gets to choose sort of which one they're part of or aligned with when they make their characters. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go with that, because I know it'll be cool, whatever they choose. Anywho, that's my rundown. I hope it wasn't too rambly. This game is very much on my mind. I am very much looking forward to all of these games, actually. The One Ring, just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I would say the One Ring is definitely the one I would most likely do either a one shot or a very short run of, but I would love to run or play with that game. So Jeremy, if you're still listening and you want to run it, I'm okay with that too. Like I said, we only got to play the first half of this introductory Hobbit adventure, and the guy who's running it is a big like 4E fan, so it just fell apart. It's not a 4E vibe at all. It's not a tactical game. It's not a pushing points around to do ability kind of game. It's not a bunch of different feats kind of game. It's about the vibe of Tolkien, and I loved it. I enjoyed being a fat hobbit. It was really sad that we didn't get to finish. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to all these. I think what's going on now? I think we have one more weekly before Jeremy takes a break, if I'm correct in thinking that. So I might be doing a couple more little just random things. There is a history of heavy metal video I'm working on. That won't be live though. I'll just put that up. Not heavy metal music, heavy metal the magazine. Kind of like the D6 video I did. It's something from my youth that was really important and fundamentally tied to my gaming career. So I wanted to do a little video on that. In fact, I literally ordered a copy of the very first heavy metal that I ever owned. So I have that replaced. And then I kickstarted the new heavy metal, so I have the copy of the new one. So I'm going to do kind of a personal experience video with a little history thing, and then we'll flip through the old issue and the new issue. So hopefully I'll have that out in like a week or so. But yeah, I mean, feel free after I log off to share your thoughts on any of what we've talked about. Sounds metal. Yes, very metal. I could even show you. Here, let me grab it real quick. Under a bunch of mess here. This is the new Kickstarted one, and you could choose different classic art covers or new covers. I chose this Frazetta cover because I'm a big fan of the Frazetta. And this is the very first heavy metal I ever bought as a child, which I shouldn't have been able to buy, incidentally, because this is not a kid's book at all. But we'll go through that eventually on the channel. But yeah, I guess that's it, guys. That was my ramble. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for everything, for hanging out with me. And I will see you later.